Hello and welcome to another instalment of our occasional podcast called I Wish I Hadn't. I'm Dave Hill.
And I'm John Wyatt. As you can tell from our names, David and Jonathan, we were born in the 1950s, so we've had many years to accumulate embarrassing moments which we now feel happy to share.
The dictionary defines regret as a sorrowful remembrance, a sense of loss. But we're not in the business of sorrow and loss here. We're dealing with those things in life that we might wish had been otherwise, but which we're now prepared to own up to. Well, John, here we are again.
Once again.
Here we are again. Having it's like buses, isn't it? And having done one podcast together, we're in the same place, and another one comes along almost immediately afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, they're not going to come out almost immediately afterwards, probably. No. But doing them together.
But I think at the end of the last one that we actually did properly, we threatened that the next one would be on the subject that we share obviously a lot of memories of, which is education.
Yeah.
And we'd always said that the best way to record that will be face to face rather than over a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And the opportunity has arisen.
It has.
And so here we are, sitting about to launch into certain memories, certain regrets.
From long ago.
Long ago, in the old black and white days. When,
black and white days.
When schoolboys wore caps and
we
shoved books down the back of their trousers.
And we wrote on papyrus.
We did indeed. Yes,
yeah. I have, when I was thinking of notes for education, I wrote down 3 things I wish I hadn't done at school. First one was I wish I hadn't been tied to a tree in nursery school. The second one...
Teachers were hard but fair in those days, weren't they? Really?
These are trails. We'll come back to these as stories. The second one was that I wish I hadn't been ordered to mime at a primary school concert.
Yes, yeah.
And the third one was that I wished that I hadn't become invisible at secondary school.
Yes. That's what I do remember very well.
Yeah. Do you have any memories of nursery school, preschool?
Preschool? No, I mean, the only thing that I remember of my very first day of school was I can remember being taken into this large room where there were lots of other children, which was actually... It's now a private house, but it used to be the Girls and Infants School in Bedminster.
How did you qualify for that? Were you?
Well, I think it was the infant side of it. Really.
Okay,
I don't think I really changed gender or anything, but
okay.
And I remember going into seemed an enormous building to me, and I remember being quite sort of interested in the fact that all these other children were there. And quite staggered that one little boy who I think I must have known already, no names, no patrial, but he was sat absolutely wailing and crying and inconsolable because his parents had left him there. And I found that a bit strange. I couldn't see why, because it all seemed very exciting to me.
Wow.
I looking around, the activities going on and people playing with stuff. Yeah. So I can remember that very first morning. I think like many children, I was quite shocked and surprised to find that I had to go back the next day as well.
Ah, right.
I mean, that's often a thing that again. But that's the only real early
night work, really, isn't it?
If
you can do one day of work and that will be it, fine. But you've got to do it for years and years and years. Yeah. Now, my nursery school is the being tied to a tree, and I'm not quite sure why it happened. I know who did it. It was the son who was much older. He was probably at primary school then. Of the nursery school teacher.
Oh, right.
It's kind of a private nursery school.
Yeah.
And I think we'd been out at playtime, and for some reason, he tied me to a tree. And I remember standing there feeling quite unhappy. I was possibly crying because I hadn't been able to go back into the classroom. And I said, I don't know who came and found me. I don't know why he tied me to a tree. It's just quite a vivid memory.
This hasn't sort of encourage you to be interested in bondage or anything like that at your
No,
later age?
no. Well, I'm going to say sadly not, but I mean probably happily not. No, it's. I've never wanted to be tied to anything ever again. Actually,
I mean, I think my memories of early school days of like lining up to a bell and always being regimented and singing hymns from what seemed like massive sheets that were pinned up on the wall. And stuff like that. But and of course reading, learning to read and finding this whole new world that reading brought out in me, and I just loved it. I loved the fact that you could find these stories from it.
I mean, I really enjoyed pretty much all of school, really. I mean, people talk about, they say the best days of your life. I wouldn't say it was the best days of my life, but I certainly was never unhappy, particularly at school in the sense of learning.
No, I never felt I didn't want to go to school. I mean, there were probably days when I thought, I could do with just playing in the sunshine a bit, but it never made me rebellious and refused to go.
And I went to a primary school, a small sort of private school in Bridport, and my brother and sister had both been there before me. My sister was still there. There were only 2 classes, so there were probably 50 or 60 kids at most in the school. I mean, my sister remembers that on my very first day at school, I was standing at the front in my smart new blazer, and a larger child behind me sneezed and decorated all the back of my blazer. I wasn't aware of that, but my sister was further back and could see, was feeling a bit sorry for me, I think, but it was fine for me.
I remember talking of blazers and things like that. I remember when moving up to the junior school, I suppose, in a building which apparently appeared as the 3rd worst for facilities in the country in a newspaper report in the late 50s, yes, which was the old Bedminster junior. Well, it's the all-age school originally, and then it became the junior school at East Street in Bedminster. And those old buildings, because the outside toilets, basically, the outside toilets were at the end of at the other end of the playground, and I think there was only cold water in the taps and like a long urinal and stuff, but that was for these poor junior school children to traipse out to if they needed to go to the toilet in all weathers. We're talking snow and rain and everything.
You just break the ice and the bog, don't you?
Absolutely, yes. But it was also a place where you could, if you got a job as like milk monitor, which I did, it meant that you could waste the first, because you had to wash them in the sinks out there, you could waste the first 15-20 minutes of the next lesson after break time, which I frequently did because it was maths, which explains why my maths has never been great, because a lot of the basic stuff I think I missed.
On the other hand, you are a fantastic milk monitor.
I tell you what, yes, I
into later life.
Yes.
If ever I think, I really need a milk monitor now, I'm on the phone to you.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you see, milk, those little half bottles, freezing cold in the winter.
Yep.
In the summer, you drank this warm, claggy stuff. That's an wish I hadn't, really. Summer,
definitely wish I hadn't drunk some.
Pretty unpleasant.
I'm sure it gave us various upset stomachs at the time, because it was probably going off at the time. And ours, I mean, in that particular, say the facilities in that school, almost in the middle of the classroom was a stove with a big pipe.
Yes.
And almost like a fencing bit around it to make sure you didn't burn yourself on it, but it was in the classroom, and the crates of milk used to come in from the icy cold outside, frozen, and be put near to this stove so that by break time it had thawed out. Now, of course, if break was late, then it became warm even in the winter. So I mean, it sounds Dickensian.
It does
doesn't
sound.
This is why it was 3rd worst in the country.
Yeah, it's so nice that nice Mr. Dickens came in and wrote about our childhood, isn't it? Really?
Yes. Hard times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's probably to be political for a minute. It's the only reason I ever have to think of Mrs. Thatcher kindly, because she was the one who did away with school milk, wasn't she? Maggie Thatcher, milk snatcher.
Yes, indeed. But then again, John, if she'd not done away with it, or done away with it quicker, we wouldn't have been able to bring in that milkshake flavouring that we used to put in the milk when we were at secondary school. That's moving on to secondary school. Yes, I do remember that.
No, we'll keep it to primary for the moment.
No, I was saying about the school blazers. That I remember when it was still an all-age school. Because when we first went there, I think it was still an all-age school for the ones who didn't go to grammar school. And
so you mean it went right up to
right up to sort of, it would have been 14 then, wouldn't
14,
it?
14, yeah.
And we, very small children, used to, at playtime, ride round on the backs, like piggybacks,
yes,
having almost like a jockey on a horse on these older boys,
yeah,
and they would run around with us on their shoulders, and we'd sort of slap at someone else to try and knock them off the shoulders onto the tarmac playground. Very sensible thing to do. Yeah. But I can remember now that if you were hanging on to one of these older boys, I can remember the smell of the blazers, because these blazers have been passed down from child to child in a family.
Yeah.
Never been dry cleaned, obviously.
No.
And it was a heady mixture of sort of probably tobacco, because there would have been smoking going on.
Yeah.
Probably alcohol, because alcohol had been drunk. And basically body odour.
Yeah.
So they and it was like a comforting smell, because you knew you were safely hanging on to this
a very vivid
steed.
memory.
That was tremendously vivid memory. Yeah.
I'm going to come on to the second one. I wish I hadn't been ordered to mime at a primary school concert. We had to do a summer concert for all the parents.
Yes.
On the lawn outside the headmistress's house.
This is an idyllic picture.
It is an idyllic picture. It was a lovely summer's evening.
Were there cucumber sandwiches with the crust cut off?
Yes,
and squash.
Exactly. Yeah. But we obviously had to do performances in advance, practices for the concert. And we had a music teacher, and as we were practicing, she shouted out, "Stop, everyone!" And so we all stopped, and she said, and she sort of turned her ear to us, and she said, "Someone is groaning, and I think it's you, Jonathan." And you can imagine the shame. I mean, I've always thought I've got quite a nice voice. I can hold a tune. But to be accused of groaning. And so I was told that I had to mouth the words and not sing. So when the school concert was for all the parents, I think probably my parents knew that I was miming. So I was probably one of the very first instances of people miming.
Yes.
I mean, had I been on top of the pops at any occasion, I would have been an absolute master.
Absolutely, yes, no problem at all.
So I just had to mouth the words while every other child sang. It was, the humiliation is still there.
I can imagine. I mean, interesting that just as a slight divergence of that, when I was actually teaching and I started to bring in microphones and sound equipment for school productions, you'd have a large group of children, and it didn't matter where you put the microphones, that you always, the closest child to the microphone, who would be the loudest over the PA system, would be, as they called them, a growler, and you had to surreptitiously move them or move the microphone, but it always found them. Always found them.
Slightly different connotation to growler.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Yeah, no, I thought carefully before I used the word.
Yeah, we'll pass over that. Yeah,
a groaner. Then
a groaner.
Yeah.
Do you remember discipline at primary school?
At primary school, I remember there were children who were disciplined, and it was probably like a slipper or something, because that was still going at the time. I myself was never in that situation, I have to admit. Never someone who was going to upset the apple cart.
We have one of those teachers who would carry a ruler around, and if she disapproved of something, she would come and whack it down on your knuckles. I can't remember. I got a feeling I was probably whacked with it, but I mean they were just sort of free with discipline in those days, weren't they? I mean,
absolutely.
Which obviously nowadays would cast terror into people. You'd be aghast if somebody did that, but it was just kind of
It was the norm at the time. Wasn't it? It was the norm. Yeah, we found that I found that there were. I mean, I remember there were a couple of children who were disciplined in that way and were often told off in the classroom and shouted at and screeched at, and then, to be honest, eventually disappeared from the class. And I think they were removed and sent somewhere else, schools for naughty boys and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So and you just sort of forgot about them then, because they weren't part of your life anymore. They'd gone.
And school lunches at primary school, do you remember?
Yes, I do, because I was forced at primary school by one of the dinner ladies to eat, I think it must have been something like semolina or something I didn't like.
Yeah, frog spawn.
Something horrendous. And I was ill afterwards. I threw up because I didn't like whatever it was. And I can remember I think it was my mum who came in and had words with the dinner lady after that, because, how dare you force my child to eat something he doesn't want to.
Right.
And I can always remember after that, it didn't work in my favour though, because this dinner lady was quite vindictive, and on duty at playtimes and dinner times, after she wouldn't make me eat things, but I can remember being told off many times by this lady for small indiscretions, because she wasn't happy that she'd been told off, chatted to by my mum. But no, that was but actual school I didn't mind school dinners, but having said that, I often went to my grand's house, which was only a short walk away at dinner time.
Did you? Okay.
At primary school, I was only about 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was allowed to walk to my grand's and have lunch there.
It's funny you
back.
say that, because I was going to say firstly that my overriding memory of school dinners is mince. Kind of grey.
Is that how you walk into the dining room?
That's right, yeah. But yeah, it seemed to be, most days it was mince, I seem to remember. But it's true what you say, because if you finished your school lunch, you were then able to walk up the road, the main road, to the sweet shop.
Yeah.
And I always remember one unfortunate kid who could never finish his dinner because, he obviously had sort of eating issues. He was never able to go up. But we were free to leave the school in the lunch hour when we were probably 8 or 9. Walk up on your own or with friends to the shop. Again, it's just such a foreign concept today, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, it just wouldn't happen. I mean, it's frowned upon with some of the older children these days. I mean, some of them do, but we were, as you say, we were primary school age and we were out to leave the premises. Yeah,
so it's not, and I wish I hadn't, because there was no issue with that, was there really?
No.
So, I mean, then you got on to, did sports days, do you remember anything about sports days?
Sports days, I do remember sports days, things, such events as throwing the cricket ball.
Well, that was quite sophisticated. I was thinking egg and spoon races.
Yeah, well, I think we did all those
sack
races. I'll be honest, I was in a class where I was never ever going to win very many things, because in our lifetime the Paul Rendalls and the Andrew Newberrys were in the same class as me, and they were far better at everything and won everything.
Well,
I did once win throwing the cricket ball, which is why I remember that.
Oh, well done.
But I think Andrew must have had an off day or felt unwell.
Yeah.
And I actually beat him by a couple of yards, and somewhere I have a certificate that says first in throwing the cricket ball.
Very good. You still have the certificate?
I think it's somewhere up in the loft, yes.
Is it one of your prized? I think actually I've seen it framed in your house, actually. You shouldn't be modest about it.
Yes, in the lounge over the fireplace.
Yeah. Now, I don't have particularly happy memories of school. There were, as I say, egg and spoon race. There was the slow bicycle race, which is an interesting one. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember seeing those.
The three-legged race. But the one I enjoyed the most was the wheelbarrow race.
Yes.
Because I had a friend who was the tallest boy in the class. I was the front of the wheelbarrow. And although it sort of looked rather improper, somebody would pick you up and you were kind of scissored at the waist, weren't you?
Indeed,
but then he was a big strong boy, so he could virtually pick me up and my hands would just sort of patter along the grass, and we won by a mile because all the others were painfully sort of plodding along hand over hand, and we were just pattering to the end straight away.
They always seem to be fun, those sports. The concept of everybody has to win wasn't there at the time.
No.
It was a case of you either won, second or third. Anything else was nowhere.
But nowadays it's rather frowned on that they're not considered to be competitive, are they now?
No, no, no.
You don't have.
No. Have you? I mean, you know, we've been talking for quite some time about our primary and first school experiences, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you've got any more of those to come out, or whether you're ready to move on to the next stage of education.
I think we will move on to the next stage of education. I mean,
in fact, I think what we'll do is, looking at the how much we've recorded so far, I think we'll make this a part one of education.
I think
and
so.
we'll move on to part two. For
we'll
another
give
time.
the genie a lot of stuff. I mean,
Yes.
we could call him in now just to maybe dispose of a few things.
Well,
from primary school.
I'd actually quite like him to come in and maybe make me enjoy the semolina, so I didn't have to worry
So
every
throw up.
lunchtime more about being picked on by this dinner lady.
Yeah.
Because the fact that I've got a memory of it means it obviously did stick with me for some time. That I worried about that. So thank you, Jeannie, for removing.
Yes.
Maybe you could remove her as well.
That would be nice.
Which is a little bit.
Yeah, she'd
little bit,
disappear in a puff of smoke.
Yes,
Yeah, or fall into a vat of mince.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
It would probably taste the same, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I think I'd like the genie to make me sing as sweetly as a nightingale, so that the teacher put me front and centre, singing in the loudest voice, so that I wasn't hidden at the back miming.
The
in
Alec Jones
humiliation
of
that.
your
Jones,
generation.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Brilliant. Yes. Okay. Well, on for the next time to the next stage of our education, which would be secondary.
Secondary. School. Yeah.